At the end of the 2023 season, I had the boat craned out to do some routine maintenance on the hull. Parts of the stern gear were checked and I replaced the cutlass bearing together with the flexible coupling bushes and the self-aligning stern gland. After removing the rudder, the propeller and shaft were withdrawn and a new cutlass bearing was fitted. Moving on to the engine bay, the Vita's flexible coupling was dismantled and new rubber bushes fitted. The last job on the shaft was replacing the old Vita's self-aligning bearing stern gland with their latest version. The engine is a Thornycroft 90, which is basically a marinized BMC 1.5 diesel engine, and touch wood, with regular maintenance and parts replacement, has been running every season since 1974. At a steady 1600 revs, the fuel consumption is about 2 litres an hour. On the 7th of July 2024, the boat was lifted back into the creek after several coats of anti-fouling were applied to the hull. Final checks for leaks were made as we had replaced all the bolts on the bilge kills. And so to the first trip of the season. We decided to explore the Swale and Medway for the next 2 days. I was using a Panasonic 1000 camera and experimenting with a GoPro 11. We are now passing the Selby Ellen anchored in the Swale, and she is a Humber keel built at Richard Dunstan's in 1954 for the British Oil and Cake Mills Limited of Selby. She has now been converted into a houseboat. The sailing barge Greta, eastbound in the Swale and making her way to Whitstable Harbour. Alongside in Ridham Dock on the West Quay is the general cargo vessel Lady Alida, and on the East Quay is the Semsole discharging cement. Passing Rushington outward bound, we see the tug Norcrest, owned by Nick Murray. The tug was the ex-Meeching and was built for British Railways and based at Newhaven, and it is now up for sale. Alongside is the Jester. The other tug is the Pullmore, owned by Whitstable Marine Services, and finally the ex-PLA River Pilot cutter Patrol. Also alongside Rushington is the passenger vessel Cruiser, and she is getting ready to depart for Queenborough All-Tide landing stage to embark passengers for a day trip to Southend-on-Sea. Laid up at Rushington for some time now are the Humphrey Morris, which is the ex-Port of London Health Authority launch, and the coastal tanker Grovedale H. On their Queenborough moorings are the local cockle boats Reliance 3 and the Carol Ann. Laid up on one of the Queenborough moorings is the Jacob Marley, which had been operating on the now defunct Gravesend to Tilbury ferry service. Alongside Sheerness Docks is the Antigua Barbuda registered general cargo vessel Benabel G, and I believe at the time she was discharging rebar. On a regular service from the Baltic ports to Sheerness is the paper carrier Lisbeth Seaways. Alongside Sheerness is the 14,000 gross registered tonne Panamanian cement carrier NCC Kingdom. Here we see a selection of Svitzer tugs alongside their berth at Garrison Point, including the Svitzer Estelle. GPS India about to take a barge over to the Isle of Grain aggregate jetty to load for further transit to the Thames. After spending the night anchored in Oare Creek, we then proceeded inward bound Medway. Photographed using the Panasonic 1000 at 1080 and the GoPro 11 at 4K resolution. Alongside Thamesport is the Dutch registered coaster Anita. She is about to open the hatches and discharge rebar, and I think she might have arrived from Turkey. We are now in Gillingham Reach, and in the distance can be seen Gillingham Pier and the Bournos, which is the entrance to Chatham Docks. Looking across to Hoo Marina, we can see quite a collection of old lightships and tugs, and they're waiting to be converted into houseboats. Alongside at Chatham is the preserved German coaster Unterelbe. Alongside the GPS jetty at Upner is the crane ship Devon Sampson. She was built in 1963 for the Port of London Authority as the London Sampson. She was sold in the mid-1960s and had her name changed when she worked at Plymouth. Outward bound is the KM Otter. She was previously the Medway Otter. Rounding Chatham Ness is the crane ship Devon Sampson, assisted by the GPS tug Stephen B. Still moored at Strood is the Foxtrot-class Soviet submarine, Built at Leningrad in 1967 and looks as though the conning tower has had a fresh coat of paint. On the port-hand side can be seen the Medway Bridge Marina. Several craft can be seen on the starboard side, including the tug Speedwell. Approaching Aylesford Bridge with a strong flood tide behind us, we decided to turn around and head back towards Rochester. The tug Allah, which I now believe has sunk, and the ex-London and Rochester Trading Company motor barge Cecil Gilders. Through Rochester Bridge, we are now looking at the demolished Acon Ship Repair Yard. Now with the ebb tide behind us, we are approaching Thamesport, and it looks like there's a feeder ship alongside. Alongside Thamesport is the feeder ship A to B Future, which is on a regular service to Moerdijk near Rotterdam with her sister ships. Alongside the Isle of Grain ballast berth is the GPS India and barge, loading aggregate for the Thames. Outward bound from Stangate Creek, we head across to Thamesport, where a coaster is alongside. The coaster is the Lindeborg, and she is discharging ballast into lorries. The remains of Queenborough Pier, originally built for a passenger ferry service to the Netherlands, and later in World War II was used as an inshore minesweeping base. Alongside Queenborough All-Tide landing stage is the cruiser, and it's about to depart for Southend-on-Sea and an estuary cruise to the World War II Monsall Forts. As we approached the East Swale and Hearty ferry, Thames barges were gathering for the weekend Swale barge match. To follow, there will be another out and about video filming shipping and craft on the Swale, Medway and this time the Thames.